The seminar that I'm going to give to you is called the Retirement Income Management or Living in Retirement, and it's really good for those of you that are within a few months of retiring or have retired. We typically only give the seminar kind of at the end of the year, and we send it out to the retirees who are already receiving a pension, because we get a lot of those attend to it. So it's sort of one we don't advertise that much, but Chris saw it on my email and he asked me to put it on, so you get to listen to it. Couple of handouts though. I hope you grabbed this guy, which has got a couple of things on it. It's got a budget worksheet that we're going to explain. I'm not going to have you do it during the presentation. Then there's a nice resource list of things that are real handy. Might be some valuable information on there for you. And then I think we had our rollover comparison checklist, and that's for people who are thinking about taking their deferred comp out when they leave. It's just to give them an idea of things you should ask the other broker if you're moving your money out, because you may be paying more in fees. The other handout I gave you is, or I hope you grabbed, was an evaluation form. Whenever we do start doing a seminar, we always like to get an idea of how, especially one that we're starting for the first time, and I've been doing this one a couple times, so I want to kind of see what points I'm getting through to you and what points I may be missing. So if you check off my name, it's Jim on this list where it says educator. And then when we get to the slide, I'm going to do my damnedest to make sure you see where the answer is. Now, we don't go in order though. The questions don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They skip around, but I'll hopefully you'll know where we're at when we get to that particular slide. So if you'd answer the questions when we get to them, I'd appreciate it, and then hand that back in at the end of the presentation. Disclosures that we always have to give is just to let you know that we can't give you any tax, legal, or investment advice. We're here to help you be more knowledgeable about your retirement, but we can't give you specific guidance on which pension option to choose or which investment you should be in the deferred comp. We'll help you to, if you have questions about how the pros and cons, those are the sort of things we can help you with, but we can't really sit down and say, yep, this is the one you should pick, this is the one for you. We'll do our best to explain things, but again, unable to give you specific advice. We'll just refer you to either your tax preparer or your attorney, or if you have your own investment advisor, you might check with that person as well. So the workshop today, or this presentation, we're going to cover these categories. Things have changed now in retirement, and we're going to talk about those different stages in your retirement. The risks that you have to be considering when you're in retirement, some ways to minimize, and I want to stress the word minimize. We're never going to be able to reduce risks, but there are things we can do to possibly minimize their impact. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to manage your retirement income, things that you can look up, different options and so forth. To get me a better idea of where you're at, and generally, like I said, we usually give this seminar to people that are current retirees. Are any of you a retiree? All right. So none of you is receiving a Social Security, or you are receiving a Social Security? You are? Anybody receiving? Okay, and no one else is retired yet, right? Who's getting close to retiring? Like within a year or two?
No, not that close.
Not that close? Year or two? Year or two? Or I think you said a couple months, right? Okay. Year or two, okay. So this will, this one, you may get a few things out of it because I know you were at the last presentation. Were you here earlier today? Yeah. Okay. So sometimes you'll pick up different things. I'm not sure it'll be, you may find it real helpful. You might say, oh, I never thought of that. So we'll see. I'll be kind of curious because, as I said, usually the crowd's already retired. So this is kind of you're not all retired. You're all still active employees. So I'll be kind of curious to see, what your feelings are as we go through this. Let's talk then. Let me explain to you the different parts of retirement because, retirement has changed. If you even think about maybe your parents or your grandparents, they used to work till they dropped dead at the job. That was the old ways. And now we all want to quit working at age 60 and be retired for 30 or 40 years. So we know we're all living longer. Well, what happened is this particular author of this book, Michael Stein, who's a certified financial planner, he actually broke down retirement into 3 different phases. And if you look at question number 1, you should see the answer on this slide. But he broke down retirement into these 3 different phases that we go through, and I'll describe them. So we have go-go, slow-go, and no-go. And again, hopefully question 1, you'll find the answer to this on the slide here. If you didn't hear me, just answer it. So let me describe go-go. That's right after you retire, basically. And you may be as active as you ever as when you were working. This is the stage that we hope lasts the longest. This is why we're still physically able to do everything. You know, you may take on a part-time job, or you start a career. You may be traveling. You know, who knows? You may be joining the local bungee jumping club. No, the bocce club. I don't know. You know, this is the age where we all love to be at, because we're doing all kinds of things, and we're enjoying those retirement years, and you're able to do those things you want to do. How long this time lasts is going to depend a lot on how physically able you're able to do these things, but also how much money you have saved up, because maybe you're going to be traveling a lot. Well, if you're traveling, the amount of travel you do may be based on how much you've saved up. So this is the phase right after retirement, and you hope it lasts as long as you possibly can. The second phase is where your body might start to say, I got to slow down a little bit. You know, maybe we just get tired. People like to travel a lot, sometimes just get tired of traveling because it's become a hassle. My neighbors have been retired for a number of years. They used to always go up, drive up to Minnesota to go fishing. And sadly, Wayne, some of the days, some months ago, he said, yeah, this will be our last summer was our last summer to go up there. He said, yeah, it's just getting to be a bit of a pain. You know, and it was just kind of sad, because they're still active. They get out, they have 5 acres of yard to mow. So they still mow it over the summer, but, you know, he said, I don't think we're going anymore. And that was kind of sad. So for me, Wayne and his wife are starting to maybe progress to that slow go stage. It was like, yeah, we're still active, but, you know, it's either hassle, or we're just getting a little tired with it, and planning's a pain in the butt, or, you know, maybe it was a financial thing. What happens, though, is sometimes your costs shift. What's funny is that in that slow go stage, maybe you were, in the go-go stage, you were doing a lot of traveling, and now in the slow-go stage, you're not doing as much traveling, so you might think, well, my expenses drop. Well, what happens in the slow-go stage is that now the expenses shift to maybe health issues. And also, this is the stage in your life when you want to start setting up those planning with family members in case you do need assistance, or with whether it's in-home care or something like that. This is where you want to make sure those pieces are in place. Or if it also means meeting with your attorney to make sure proper documents are written up, whether it's a living will or trust, because you still have your wits about you, and you want to make sure you're making right decisions. The third stage that Michael Stein described was the one we all don't want to get to. This is where we basically lost independence. We're in the nursing care. This, though, may not be because of yourself. It may have occurred because of a spouse. Maybe your spouse has passed away, and maybe they were taking care of you, or the maid breadwinner, or something like that. So sometimes going in the no-go stage is not anything that you did. It could have happened to something that happens to your spouse. They've had an injury or an illness that requires care. These 3 stages, how long they'll last, who knows? We all hope the first one, the go-go, lasts the longest. But the other part is that you might not get to the no-go stage. Some people don't even make it that far. They pass away maybe while they're in the slow-go stage. And you don't always necessarily go in order of these stages. Some people may have had a stroke or an illness while still working, and they go right from working to the no-go stage. So they don't necessarily fall in order. This is how we'd like them to go, but it's possible somebody might skip the first 2, or someone might have had a stroke and recovers and goes to the go-go stage. So those are things that we just don't know about. So you kind of want to be thinking, yeah, that could happen. If it does, who's going to take care of me, and how am I going to pay for it? So those are some of the things that we tried to bring up during this presentation. I know that when I was learning this, the educator coordinator always said, when he does his presentation, he's not trying to answer questions. He just wants to bring things to your into your brain for you to be thinking about, for you to ask yourself. So we're not so much going to try and answer your questions. We just want you to be pondering these issues. So one of them is, okay, how long will you be in each of these stages? I don't know what to tell you. Will you go into each one of them in order? Again, I don't know what to tell you. Anything could change your health. An accident could change them. But anyway, that's what Michael Stein came up with, those 3 particular stages of what retirees go through. Whether you follow them in order or not depends on a lot of factors. Being in control of your retirement years is really going to be based upon a lot of things. One is, have you saved enough money, and are you able to physically do those things that you want to do? So a lot of this boils down to a very simple process, and it means just having a budget and then assumptions. Retirement planning is so assumptive. We have to assume various things. How long will we live? Or how long will I be in this stage? Or what rate of return will I get? I can't answer those. I have no way of knowing that for you. And that's why retirement planning is, almost like shooting at a cloud. You may hit the cloud, but, your bullet goes right through it. You don't know if you've actually done any damage. Well, retirement planning can be very challenging because there's so many assumptions. But some things you do have control over are, you can look at putting a budget together. You can look at trying to estimate how long or what sort of expenses you'll have and what sort of income you have come in. And by having a budget, it at least gives you a little bit of control over that aspect. It allows you to understand, can I buy this thing or can I not? Can I afford to? Is this something we can do? Because we have enough money. So what we're talking about is basically thinking about a budget, looking at what your expenses are going to be, but also we'll talk about the things that are unexpected, the what ifs. What if I have a heart attack or I have a stroke or I need long-term care, I need to go into nursing care? Those are the things that we don't tend to think about. We all think about the things that we know about today, but we don't think about what could happen. And that's what's really important. And sadly, I think as we all get older, I know I'm thinking about mortality and, how long will I be around and who will get what's left over, and I want to make sure the house is paid for, etc. So the what ifs. What if I don't die? What if instead I have a stroke? There's so many what ifs. It's like driving your car, though. You take a risk when you get in your car. Same thing in retirement. So we want to be thinking not only of what we know is going to happen, but what about the unexpected things? We know we're going to have increased costs. We have inflation we'll have to deal with. We have to deal with taxes. But what if I have to pay for long-term care? What are the things I can think about? I believe you will see the answer to question 4 on this slide. So we're going to talk about risks that are going to affect your retirement income, your retirement lifestyle, and then health in the form of health insurance, what it costs. So again, hopefully you'll be able to answer question 4 upon viewing this slide. So let's talk about the retirement. What's a risk to your retirement income? Well, first of all, it's spending too much or too little. Now, spending too little might sound strange because the IRS does require this little thing called required minimum distribution. When you turn 70 and a half, if you have a 401k or 403b, the 457 plan, or an IRA, you have to start taking money out of it at 70 and a half. So the reason I said spending too little is that if you end up having not touched any of those accounts at 70 and a half, the IRS says you have to start taking some of it out. Guess what? They get to collect from you. Taxes when you do that. So if you happen to have a large account you've not been spending from, you might have to take a whole lot out of it, and that means that's taxes to Uncle Sam or the IRS. So first of all, a budget. Being comfortable knowing what are your anticipated income, what are your various expenses, and knowing that some people get paralyzed and they don't spend anything because they're afraid they won't have the money down the road. And then some people spend like, and I've said this many times, sometimes people get in retirement and they spend money like drunken sailors. Those are the people that we see back at work because they've run out of money. So it's really crucial you think about having a budget. And we're actually going to go through, I'll show you the budget. We have a budget set up for all 3 stages. So when you get a chance, you might want to work on that, not during the presentation, but we're actually going to look at a budget, an example of one during all these 3 retirement stages. What's a second risk to your retirement? Well, it's your longevity. That's another big iffy. How do we know how long we're going to live? You know, you can look at your family history, you can look at your own personal health, but what we do know that is if you're a healthy male and you hit age 60, right now about 50% of those males live to be 85. Now that's the average. That means half go to that age and the other half don't make it. And then if you're female, you have that same odds of maybe getting up to 88. Again, that's an average if you hit 60 and you're in good health, or 65. But the other part is that if you're married, you actually have a greater chance of one of you living to 92 now. So being married apparently is good for your health. You live longer. So how long will you live is important, or how long you think you'll live, because that's going to help you determine your budget and how much you can spend. So understanding life expectancy, and sadly, the only thing I like to tell people is, I guess if you don't know for sure, take out the Ouija board and see if it'll tell you, or go see your favorite palm reader. Another risk that can occur to you while you're in retirement is going to be just the cost of living. You know, when you're retired, there's two things you still have to deal with. One's taxes and the other one is inflation, cost of goods. And what we're showing you here is, let's say you've retired on about $50,000 a year, and if inflation's around 3%, 25 years later, which isn't unrealistic, you might be 85 at that time. Your $50,000 might only buy you about $23,000, $24,000, the same goods, just because of inflation. And this is important to keep in mind, because we'll talk about how to manage your retirement income, but you want to keep in mind you're going to be living on a fixed income essentially. Your pension and Social Security are fixed. Now, I'm going to diverge for a second and just tell you, when you fill out the pension app, we now have an option for you to choose a 1%, 2%, or 3% COLA. If this particular graph scares you, if you're worried about maybe living 20, 30 years in retirement, we do have an option now where you would pick a lesser pension benefit for quite a few years. You get a lesser amount, but you gradually get an increase. What will happen is, basically after about 16 years, you will then be you will have broken even, you will have made more money. So you can compare taking no cost of living or either one of the 1%, 2%, or 3% cost of living choices. You can only choose one. And what we have found is, after about 16 years, if you choose one of the cost of living adjustments, you will eventually have caught up and have made the same amount as if you had not taken that cost of living. But then the good news is that increase continues. You get that increase every year. So if you happen to be a little worried about inflation and you have longevity in your family, picking that cost of living option might be a way to go. So again, you get less initially, and then over the years, you gradually get more and more. You get an increase, so you can choose either a 1%, 2%, or 3%. You have to wait 2 years, and then the increase begins, and you get it every year. But it takes about 16 years to actually have accumulated the same amount of money. But you're now breaking even, and you're making more, and that might be an answer to this particular slide. Another one is investment earnings. When we get older, we all tend to get a little more conservative. Most of us do anyway. So retired folks love to park their money in the most conservative investments that they can find, because they don't want the market to risk their return. Unfortunately, those are usually fixed accounts that pay very little rate of return, and the problem is inflation. We just looked at the last slide, which showed an inflation rate of 3%, but if we're putting our money in a fixed account that's barely paying 1%, you end up losing money over time. You end up having to take more money out of that personal account to compensate for the increased inflation. So being too conservative is something to be aware of, even in your retirement years. I have said this for decades. When I talk to anybody who's close to retiring or retiring, I've said, you need to put a portion, whatever is your comfort level, but keep a portion of your investment, your retirement savings, in something that's got some growth to it. Now, that amount is up to you. You may only feel comfortable having, let's say you have $100,000 in savings. Maybe you only want to risk 5,000 of it, or 5%. That's your choice. But at least put some of it into growth, because if you don't, I know for a fact, unless you die next week, for a fact, you're going to run out of money. Your money just will not keep pace with inflation. And I'll show you that. Well, the slide that illustrates that. Well, the other side of the coin of being too conservative would be being too aggressive. You don't want to be overly aggressive so that you try to make the best gains possible, because we all know what can happen. We can have an account value way up here, we're getting ready to retire, and if the market does this, it goes way down, and you actually need to take money out at that point because you've retired. You're not going to be taking money out of your account when it's at a lower value, which means it won't last as long. You want to take money out of your account when it's at a higher point. The problem is, you're too aggressive, you expose yourself to what if there's a dip in the market. Now you either have to postpone taking money out of that account until it regains its value, or you have to maybe keep working for a while. So be careful between being too aggressive and being too conservative. Information. Boy, I don't know, have you all heard about what happens to seniors? We always, seems like there's always a scam. Some senior, it's either the Social Security scam, or it's an income tax. I mean, misinformation. Just like the old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So it's easy to get taken advantage of as we get older for whatever reason. I was telling you, here's a great, before we started, I was talking about that Roku thing I've got. So I'm trying to set it up. And you go onto your TV and you have to register your Roku, or you have to download the data. And so I got to the screen and I punched in the codes on my TV, and I'm watching, and it says, error, cannot download the software. It gives me an error code. What the heck? So I called customer service for the Roku, the little device. So the gal is really nice, and she's explaining things to me, and she says, well, can you get on your computer and let me access it? I want to check your network and everything. And she showed me, look at all this, your network is full of, is infected. The network, she says, is infected. And she said there's 25,000 infections or something. You've got all these foreign addresses in here. And she said, well, let me check. I'll see if we can get this fixed. So she puts me on hold, comes back and says, you know what, for $200, we can fix that for you. But this was the company, the little Roku device. I thought, wait a minute. I may be dumb, but I ain't stupid. My mama didn't raise no fool. So I said, let me hold off on this. I'll call our provider first, and I'll have them check. So we called CenturyLink. They said, I don't see anything wrong. So in the meantime, I'd gone back down to the TV in the basement, and all of a sudden, it's feeding fine. It's going through the download. So I don't know what happened, but all I know is I didn't get built out of $200. So there's an example of how you could fall into a trap like that. You buy something thinking you're saving yourself money. Oh, we've got a problem here, but we can fix this for you. So I'm glad I didn't fall for that trap. I don't know who they were. I called them right off the Roku system. All I know is it's working now, so I'm happy about that. So misinformation. How about in your lifestyle? So what are some of the things that could affect you in your retirement lifestyle? Well, sometimes we all want to work after we retired, either volunteer or part-time. Well, maybe you don't have the skills, or you can't find the job that you'd like to do. So you may not be able to fulfill that dream. A change in your family situation. This happens a lot. There's a lot of late life or gray divorces. Happens a lot now. It's pretty sad. But a change to your family situation, whether it be a divorce or maybe an illness or an injury to your spouse, which might affect then your living situation. Maybe you're not able to care for yourself anymore because your spouse passed away and they were your caregiver. Or you're just not able to do the things around your house. Maybe you've had an accident and you can't feed yourself or dress yourself or clothe yourself. So those are things that can affect, what you had planned for retirement. And then, of course, healthcare costs. I don't think I need to say a whole lot, but you have to look at, we all know we're going to have to keep paying for insurance. Now, when we turn 65, we can get on the Medicare, but you still have to get a supplemental plan. If you have other medications you're taking, you got to include those. This slide says that the healthcare costs have gone up 6% a year, but I believe I read, or George told me that since the Affordable Care Act, it's actually been closer to 12% a year. So it's pretty sad. Healthcare is one of those things that's really going to obviously impact all of us when we get to retirement years. So you really want to be cognitive of the fact that, hey, we have all these other costs. In something that goes hand in hand with healthcare costs is that long-term care, which is a great way to help cover you if you ever need nursing care, nursing home care, or you need long care in your home. I actually went through this. I didn't go through it so much. My brother did. My mother, who only recently passed away, has been under 24-hour care in her home for probably like 7 years. She's not been able to do any of the ADLs. I'm assuming you guys know what I'm talking about. It's during the activities of daily living. She wasn't able to do anything. She's been bedridden, but she was fine. She just couldn't walk, stopped walking, and she, got got very weak and eventually suffered a stroke. And but she was paying for having someone in the house every 24 hours a day. I think she was lucky. I think she was getting somebody for like $20 an hour. Now back in Illinois, all of those ladies come from Lithuania, and they're really hard to understand what they say, but they are big burly women. So they can pick people up, and I found. So costs for long-term care, these are Wyoming costs, and these are a couple of years old. I'm sure you probably know that we're talking, $6,000 a month, and it can be even higher depending on where you live. So these are other things to keep in mind. So what are and we're going to be now answering question 5, pretty simple one. What are the things that, I'm going to recap, what are our retirement income risks? We discussed spending, not having a budget and not knowing if I should spend too much or too little. Another one we talked about was life expectancy. How long do I plan to live? I also talked about the effects of inflation, how it's going to erode your income over time. Then I talked about being too conservatively invested. That's another risk. The other one I said was being overly aggressive. And finally, we talked about, there was one other, and I'm drawing a blank. Well, I'll get to it. But anyway, that was some of the risks on retirement income. What did I say about lifestyle? Lifestyle, we talked about, are you able to find a job you'd like to do when you retire? Maybe you don't have the proper training, or you just can't find the kind of work. Maybe there's a change in your family situation. Like I said, a divorce or death of your spouse, or you've lost your independence yourself because either of a divorce or mainly because your spouse maybe isn't able to take care of you. The other reason too is, remember, when one of you passes away, that could reduce your family income because you only get one Social Security benefit. You don't get both. So that could have an impact on if you're able to live on your own, or maybe you have to now do something different. And then we talked about healthcare costs, whether it be for health insurance, long-term care. Those are things too that can have an impact or risk your retirement. And what we said the solution is, let's think about how much we might need to spend for those things, and what to minimize those risks are going to be a budget. I'm said minimize. We're not going to get rid of them, but maybe we can reduce the impact they may have on you if something comes up. And I'm referring to especially like the what ifs, and we'll talk about some what ifs to think about. So when you have a budget, it's going to help you feel comfortable knowing you can spend this amount this month or not spend this amount. Also, I think when you have a budget, it gives you a little more control over your life in your retirement years. You're not going to be relying on your kids or some stranger to maybe figure out, yes, you can buy this, or no, you can't. And hopefully give you some security throughout your years. If you have that budget, you kind of know, yep, this is where I'm at, where I have the money to fix this or get this done, or no, I have to hold off. Let's look at now kind of an example of a couple that's going to go through retirement, and they're going to set up a budget, and we'll talk about the different things for them to look at during the different stages, the go-go, the slow-go, and the no-go. So I told George this couple looks way older than 65 and 62 to me, and I've told him we have to update this picture. But anyway, Joe is 65, looks more like 85. He made $42K a year, just retired. Joe didn't have a pension, and he only saved $15,000 in his IRA. Poor Jane, I don't know. She got her, she's going to be the carrying Joe, I think, because look at Jane. She got to retire at 62. She's got a pension. She's 25 years in the Wyoming Retirement System. She's going to take option 2, which is one of the benefits that pays to her Joe after she should pass away. And she's also been saving in her 457 plan. So as we like to say, what's the smartest thing Joe did? Marrying Jane at this point. So go. So let's look at first define this particular slide in terms of the two different categories of expenses. And we're going to be discussing question number 2 in this slide. You'll see we have something called needs and wants. So needs are the things that you absolutely know you have an expense for. Those are the essentials. Those absolutely have to be paid. This is not a complete list, but we've given you a goal, a retirement worksheet, which is worksheet A. There's a much more extended list of needs. There's plenty of room for you to write your other needs on there, but needs are the things that you absolutely know you're going to have an expense for. So what are wants? Wants are pretty much like what you want them. You don't actually need them, but you want them, like ESPN 1, 2, and 3. Do you need that? Well, maybe you do, but it's a want. It's a want. So, you know, when you get, it's really crucial because you'll be living on a fixed income. You want to look at the things you absolutely have to pay for, but you'd like to have the things you'd like to do. Make sure when you work on your wants list, I would say prioritize them. Put them in order of things that are most important to you, because the hope is that you have enough money to pay for the needs, and then the money left over, you get to enjoy the wants list, and maybe not all of them, but at least prioritize the ones that are most important to you. Let's give a quick look at how Jane and Joe set theirs up and how the expenses changed. So you'll see we have 3 columns, just like we've done on the worksheet A. You'll see a column for go-go, slow-go, and no-go. So you want to think about it in terms of your lifestyle. Go-go, how many years do you think you'll be in there? Wish I could tell you. If I could, I wouldn't. I sure as hell wouldn't be here. I think I'd be playing Vegas and not working. It'd be nice if we could know for sure how long it would be, whether it's 10 years or 15 years, but that's the part where we're making some assumptions. So what Jane and Joe put together was, looks like they're still going to have a mortgage right after they retire in their go-go years. So they're still paying a $700 mortgage, because look what happened in the slow-go. There's nothing there. So that infers to me they paid that mortgage off. However, their food, which is clearly a need, you see they increased it through the slow-go and no-go due to inflation. Makes pretty much sense. Utilities went up. Now look at healthcare. Not big need during the early years, go-go and slow-go, but they really predicted, they're kind of concerned that long-term care may be an issue, or a nursing home in those no-go years. So they're putting in a budget of about $2,500 a month. And then the other expenses, which whatever it was for them, and you can see they also increased them for inflation. Now let's look at their wants. So they're still going to eat out quite a bit, it looks like, from go-go to no-go. They're hoping they're going to be able to do that. But their entertainment costs have dropped quite a bit. Looks like they're not going to be hitting the happy hour nearly as much in their later years. And also with their other itemized expenses. So what we do on the goals on your sheet is you do the same process, is you would try to estimate what you have during your go-go years and add all those up. Slow-go years, add those up, and no-go. And do the same with both the needs and the wants. And those are, again, on worksheet A. So it's the front and back. Now what you want to keep this in mind is there's some other what ifs maybe. Family responsibilities. Is there any chance